it's me, Lucy, your favorite gender studies professor who lives on the internet. Okay, so I am back with another topic, but before we get into the topic, can we get into my bougie auntie look that I'm giving you all? I mean, the face, the glasses, like the bangles, the moo dress. I'm just, opulence looks, bougie black auntie. That clearly, this is like the group I've been dying to get into. Now I'm here. I'm loving it. So I just wanted to, shout me out. Shout out to me for being amazing and looking cute. Okay, boom. Okay, now that we're over that, this video is gonna be a little vulnerable. I want to talk about serial monogamy, something that I know very well. So first of all, what is serial monogamy? Okay, so serial monogamy, how I would define it and how it's typically defined, it's just like people who constantly find themselves in a relationship and like just in and out of relationships, in and out of situationships, just boom, 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 boom. And I would say there's that, and I would say, but every relationship and situationship is like quote unquote the one, da 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 da. And so I'm being a little funny, but like not really. So we would say famous people who are serial monogamous definitely is your girl J-Lo and definitely your girl Kim K, right? And Kim K is a Libra just like me, so I'm like particularly, I understand her problems acutely. I never met the woman, don't care to, but I feel like I can spot an undisciplined Libra from a mile away. And so I think we should talk about this. So first and foremost, I want to be really clear. The reason I want to talk about it and think about it, because again, as a feminist, I'm always thinking about my behavior and my practices. So I am not in any way promoting any particular kind of way of dating or way of being, but what I am promoting is that we all take stock of our behavior and how we show up to dating, because it becomes problematic and we harm each other. And there are some harms we cannot help because whenever people gather, harm is present. But there's a way in which sometimes we do each other dirty and we just detonate each other and we trigger each other and we traumatize each other. And I think it's because we just don't have good ethics and practices around dating. And one of the topics today I want to talk about is serial monogamy. So how can I say this? I have been in a lot of relationships, and probably not a lot compared to other people, but a lot for me, right? And at one point, in each relationship, my thought was like, oh, I'm gonna be with this person for a really long time. We're gonna be in a long-term relationship. And I've been in predominantly monogamous relationships, and I've also done the poly thing. And so I got some lived experience to share and to give. And the thing I want us to think about is like, when it comes to being a serial monogamous, jumping out of one relationship to another, I want us to think about, is that ethical? Like, what do we lose when we do that? And what do we bring into the next situation? Because are we giving ourselves a chance to listen, to mend, to grieve, right? Grief is a thing I've been meditating on a lot for this past year, because almost over 600,000 people have died within our borders from COVID. Last year, there was so much grief in the air with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, just the onslaught of death of Black people, this, that, and the third. And I just think here in these United States, we as North Americans, we don't have a literacy around grief. We don't do grief well. We're not being asked on a geopolitical level to radically hold space for all of the human beings who have died within our borders over COVID. Where this weekend we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of September 11th. that is a grief that we are still in our own way wading through in a very particular kind of way, especially seeing what happened recently in Afghanistan. It's just like we're not in a different situation than we were in Afghanistan 20 years ago to where we are now, right? And so I just want to like set the stage in the context of, from a geopolitical level, there's a lot of grief that's pungent in the air, that is in the air. Okay, lots of grief in the air. So we're living in a society where on a collective level, we're not doing grief, which means it's really hard if you're trying to do grief on an individual level, because you're not going to get a lot of support. And I actually don't think we take seriously heartbreak. It's just like, if you weren't married and you weren't living with the person, some people act like, oh, it's not a big deal if you break up with folks. But baby, if you are a Pisces rising like me with big feelings, every breakup really does feel like the dissolution of a marriage, because bitch, you was really in it, right? So that's just me. I got big feelings. Like, I get very attached and I be loving, right? But so if you know you have big feelings, if you know you try to give, if you know you are trying to do all of those things, what does it look like when you get out of a relationship and you are disillusioned and you're jumping and you're going in and out of relationships in a very particular kind of way? There's nothing wrong with dating. Obviously, there are people who are poly, who are in radically beautiful, juicy, committed relationships and who are experiencing breakups with other people. I think it's possible the heart can be fully open to love while it's mourning and grieving another thing. However, there is a particular kind of person that uses serial monogamy. It's just like, I'm gonna get over this other person by getting under a new person. And if you've ever been the person who feels as if your body, your mind, and your heart was used to help someone else, quote unquote, get over, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And so I'm just thinking, as a feminist, is it okay for me to subject people to my unresolved relationship stuff? Is it ethical for me to do that? Is it okay for me to do that? And should I be doing that? And I just think we don't ask ourselves those kinds of questions. And so I think there's an ethical way to date multiple people and to go in and out of relationships. But the serial monogamous is usually someone who who can't stand being with themselves in a very particular kind of way, who doesn't want to do the hard work of unpacking why the relationships ended, what were the things that led to the end. It's just people just boop, 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 just I don't know, just stumbling through life. When I was actively in, sometimes I would say to myself, like, I don't want to be in a relationship, I don't want to be in a relationship. And sometimes I feel like literally I would wake up the next morning and I'm like, oh my God, how did I end up in this relationship? How did I end up with this person? And I felt like as if, because I didn't know how not to be in a relationship, even when I knew the relationship was tumbling into a pit of fire, I didn't even know how to like stop the car and jump out of the car and be like, I don't want to play with you no more. I don't want to ride with you anymore. I didn't know how not to do that, because I feel like all I knew how to be and what to do was be in relationships, because I used to have this thing around being chosen. Like, I have this thing around like women who look like me, women who think like me, women who are certain the kind of ideas that I have. I've always been convinced that dating for us is not going to be easy. And so there's a way in which my serial monogamy was also rooted in scarcity, because I thought like, well, like, who's going to really love me? Who's really going to kick it with me? Who's really going to blah, 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 blah. And so I say all of this to say, like, my motives for dating were interesting. I'm not going to judge it whether good, bad, or whatever, but there was a lot going on. And because those decisions were not rooted in the most healthy things, I didn't make the most healthy decisions. And so I was constantly cycling in and out of relationships. And I just think that's something that we should think about. If we take trauma and triggers seriously, and if we know that relationships are our triggers, are our traumas, what is the impact on ourselves and our collective community when we go into relationships with not a lot of intention? Is that a feminist way of dating? For me, it did not feel that way. And so, not that I'm trying to say like there's some special magic number or time frame that one needs to be single before you jump into a relationship. I just think we just need to be more present. And right? And so that's a word, that's a somatic feeling I have been trying to like deepen into. What does it mean to be radically present? Radically present with my loneliness, radically present with myself, radically present with another person. And so to me, it's just like, is it possible to really show up and be radically present if you're numbing and distracting and you're jumping in and out of things and you're jumping in and out of relationships and situations with people? You're not even really getting to know people in a very specific kind of way. You're not getting really to know yourself, because if we're being honest, we're repeating the same patterns of behavior with different people. And so to me, it's just like at one point I came to the realization like, boo, you are the common denominator here. With all the self-compassion that I could muster, I was just like, okay, sis, what do we need to do differently? Is this how we want to experience love? Is this how we want to experience relationships? And I just said no. And it's interesting because from afar, when we look at someone like Jennifer Lopez, you could either see it as someone living their best life or someone who's like, oh wow, this person is almost 60 and it doesn't look like they've changed anything in their dating habits from when they were in their early 20s when we first met Jennifer Lopez. For some people, that's not a big deal, but if you are a human being who is interested in change and transformation, that's a lot of data. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, I at one point had to look at my dating life and look at the data. And what the data was telling me is like, our decisions need to change, and how can I bring more of a social justice ethic into my dating life? Because I think that was the thing that was missing the most. And because it's just like, if I believe people are not disposable, if I believe people matter, then why do I get in situations where it feels like I don't matter? It feels like I can't assert my wants and my needs, and it definitely feels like I am being used, like I am a consumer product for someone else, for them to, that they're using to get over their past thing and their past whatever. That didn't feel good to me, and that didn't feel like a feminist way of dating. So I guess I just really want us to think about, with serial monogamy, is it helpful to the collective? Is it helpful to the collective? Or am I dragging people into my trauma, into my mess? And if I'm dragging people into my trauma, into my mess, fam, that's not a feminist thing to do. And also, in a society where our desires are being exploited against us with the algorithms, what does it look like for us to practice delayed gratification, right? Like, so that is the thing I had to do in order to kind of like, when I realized that I was addicted to relationships, I was addicted to being in and out of relationships in a very particular kind of way, that to me, even negative, awful attention was better than silence. And I really had to deal with that. I really had to deal with the fact, and I use the word addiction not to be hyperbolic, but literally it felt like an addiction. Like I had to like wean myself off of going in and out of toxic, emotionally abusive relationships on top of being a serial monogamous. And so that to me was just like, when I saw that there was a disconnect between the politics that I was espousing in my professional life and the politics I was espousing in my personal life, even though I was trying very hard to espouse a feminist politic, but it's like I would get into the relationship and then afterwards try to sprinkle feminism on top of it, and it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And so in order to wean myself off of that and to learn to do something different, I had to take myself out the game, and I had to take myself out the game for a long time, for a long little bit. Now, I am a person who's right now who am looking for love. I am looking to be in a relationship, and I am trying to figure out like all of these things that I've learned about myself, all of these things I've learned about social justice, all of these ways that I'm embodying my politics differently. I want to embody them in my personal life, because again, as Auntie Audre Lorde taught us, the personal is political. And so I want to bring all of that stuff into my personal life. But you know, we're in a panorama. We still in a panorama, and I don't know when I'm gonna be able to date people again. So I mean, hopefully, you know, somebody will holler and do something, right? But whatever, we'll see. Send your girl prayers, light candles for me. But like, yeah. So I'm just thinking about that, and so I feel as if I'm in a place in my life where I have cut that addiction to serial monogamy, but it didn't become serious until I stopped and I looked at it. And so again, I'm not telling you to do what I do what I did, but what I am asking for us to do is take serious stock in how we date, and is the way we date, is it ethical? Is it loving? Does it really take into consideration other people? Or are we so afraid of being with ourselves and being with our own failures that we're using other people to distract us? And we have to really think about that. If you cannot stand your own silence, your own shadow, it's a lot to ask someone else to be with that, to be in that with you if you yourself can't stand you, right? And so when I realized that it don't matter how much sex I'm having, it doesn't matter how many dates I go on with people, that it's not going to fill the hole that I had. Once I came to that realization, because there is nothing more painful than being in a relationship and feeling lonely as fuck. Now, I say this with a caveat. I do think there is a way, every now and then, especially if you're prone to melancholy like me, there are points in our lives that you're surrounded by people, and you're always, every now and again, gonna feel lonely. For me, I think that's natural. I've come to accept that, and I've come to be with that. But that is profoundly different from I am in a relationship with someone, and because of how they treat me, because we're not in sync in a very specific kind of way, because I am just here to serve them in a very particular kind of way, I feel isolated and I feel lonely inside of the relationship. That's painful. It's painful to sleep next to someone who doesn't touch you, who doesn't see you, and you feel completely and utterly alone. And to me, while I was sitting there and experiencing that, it's just like, well, boo, you could have been in your own bed alone by yourself, and at least this pain wouldn't feel so guttural the way it feels because you're lying next to this person. And those are when I had to make some changes, because to me it's just like I was in these relationships and all they did was exacerbate my stuff because I refused to stop long enough to confront my stuff. Now, nuance, it's important. I don't necessarily think that you have to go off on the Himalayan mountains, go on a retreat, do years of therapy, and then come into dating. Actually, I think it's a both and. I think we each person needs to figure out, how do I integrate my failures from my past relationship? How do I figure out, am I living into my politics as a feminist in my romantic relationships? Where do I need to adjust? Where do I need to change how I date, who I date, what I'm open to, what I'm not open to, and make myself available to love? Because what I was realizing in all of my relationships, it was white supremacy. White supremacy was showing up in my relationships, especially with Black people. Like, I've only, at this point in my life, only dated Black people. And white supremacy and anti-Blackness made it very hard for us as Black people to come together and love each other. And because we weren't all on the same page politically, what looked like, oh, are you cheating on me? Oh, are you doing this? Oh, are you doing that? Really, it was just the systems and the structures showing up in the personal, because again, the personal is political. And because I know myself to be a socio-political being, if I feel unsafe in the world, if I feel precarious, if I feel vulnerable in the world, I bring that to my romantic partner. My romantic partner brings that to me. And because we didn't have a shared language and a shared ethic about, like, One person is working on their trauma, the other person is not. One person is a feminist, the other person is not. One person is trying to live out their politics, another person just wants to talk about the politics but doesn't want to live out the politics. It makes loving hard. And so for me, I was just like, okay, well, if I keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying, I will end up with someone. And it's just like, no, that's not, it didn't work out that way for me. It didn't work out that way for me. And so I guess what I'm really stressing upon is like, are we bringing our socio-political values to our romantic relationship? And are we being honest about whether we're doing that or not? I think there is a way to date multiple people, to go in and out of relationships in a way that's healthy and ethical for everyone. And then there is a way where it's not. And in a society that encourages us to center ourselves and only ourselves, serial monogamy could be really selfish and can be really self-centered and could be really harmful to the people who get caught up in our web. While we're trying to figure it out, while we're trying to figure ourselves out, other people get hurt. They get hurt. And so as a feminist, is that the kind of name I want to have in these streets? No. And I actually don't want to date people who aren't bringing their radical, bold selves, political selves, into a romantic thing. So I just think we should be thinking about we should be thinking about how we jump in and out of relationships, because a lot of us are messy, right? Like, we get into relationships messy, like we was talking to one person and then we start talking to another person and then the person, whatever. And so it's just like, I don't know, we need to really look at like, why do we do what we do? And who does it serve? And if it's only serving me, and if we're being honest, it's not even serving you. It's not even serving you. And so, child, I ain't no relationship expert. However, I am a feminist who is serious about praxis. And when I noticed that my practice of serial monogamy was in a lot of ways in direct opposition to my political values, I needed to change how I date. And so that's the thing I want us to really think about. Like, do we give ourselves enough time to learn what we learned from our heartbreaks? Do we give ourselves enough time to implement what we've learned? Are we doing the necessary work on ourselves? Are we being honest with other people and letting other people know where we are in our relationship to ourselves? And I know for me, relationships are my Achilles heel. Romantic relationships, any kind of relationship, like that is where all of my trauma and triggers lie, right? Which I'm sure is like for a lot of us. And so I have to be very mindful of like how I enter into relationships with people and how I move inside of them to ensure that I am in line with my politics. So, I think I've covered the waterfront. So tell me what you think, tell me what you're feeling, push back, thoughts, feelings, concerns, what we feeling about, is there an ethical way to be a serial monogamous? I think so. I don't see a lot of it being practiced, but I think so. All right. That's all I got. Bye, boo.